Okay, great. So I think we'll get started now. Thank you all for being here. Really excited for this event. I just want to give everyone a heads up before I get going. We are going to record this meetup and so and publish it on our YouTube channel. So if you're not comfortable having your image shared, please keep your camera off. But if you are comfortable having your image shared on our YouTube channel, we'd love for you to keep your camera on, and that way Brendan can see when you grimace at his bad jokes. Yeah, it's just more fun, I think, when we can see each other. So with that, I'll get into the kind of formal start to the meetup. So hi everyone, my name is John Coughlin. I'm on the community relations team at GitLab. At GitLab, one of our values is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so we want to make sure that everyone in our community feels welcome and included. And so we ask all of our community members to abide by the code of conduct that I'm sharing in the Zoom chat right now. Please take a look at that and just make sure that you're showing others respect and making them feel welcome. If you do want to report any violations, or if you feel uncomfortable at all, please send me a DM in the Zoom chat, or you can report the violations to conduct at gitlab.com, an email address that I'm also pasting into the Zoom chat right now. So yeah, thanks for everyone for joining us. Really excited about the GitLab Community Day. This is our first time doing it. This is our third meetup of the day. I was actually up at 3 a.m. New York time this morning, kicking things off with our friends in APAC and Europe. And we did another meetup midday, and then this is kind of the wrap up, last call session and West Coast friendly session. So really excited with how the day has gone so far, and really excited for this last meetup because we've got an awesome presenter, Brendan, here to kind of walk us through things. Before I hand it over to Brendan, I just wanted to give a quick overview of GitLab for people who are maybe new to our community. So GitLab is a complete DevOps tool chain delivered as a single application. There's one interface, one conversation, one permission model with thousands of features, and we release every month on the 22nd. So there's always new features being added and existing features being refined and improved. And so I think you'll be really impressed if you take a look at GitLab at everything that we can do. And we're just getting started. Every month, is the best release ever. So get on board now. GitLab's an open core company, so we have an open source version that's free to use, and we love when people contribute to that. If you're interested in learning how to contribute, I'd encourage you to just Google contribute to GitLab, and we have tons of information on how you can do that. It could be code, it could be documentation, translations, it could be organizing a meetup in your local community. There's lots of different ways that folks can contribute. Some other cool things about GitLab. We're the largest, or had been the largest all remote company in the world prior to COVID. I don't know if that we still own that title, but we'll continue to be all remote even after this pandemic has ended. And we have a ton of resources available to help folks that are working remotely. So check that out in our handbook. If you Google GitLab all remote, you'll find a plethora of amazing resources to help you and your team. And yeah, everything else about our company is also really transparent. You can find recordings of our meetings on YouTube. You can access our handbook that details, everything that we do and how we run our business and our roadmaps and strategy. It's all, out there for you to kind of read, learn from. You can fork it if you want. So definitely take a look at that if you're new to the community. And with that, I'll kind of pass things over to Brendan. Brendan's going to do presentation and a demo on CI, continuous integration. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. But feel free, to kind of ask questions as we go, either in the chat, and I can read them for you, or if you want to verbalize them, just unmute your microphone. And, I'll keep an eye on who's unmuted, and I'll interrupt Brendan for you so you don't have to. And then you can ask your question. A couple other small requests, as I asked earlier, if you're comfortable being recorded, please keep your camera on. It's great for us to be able to see each other's faces during these kind of things. Please keep your microphone muted so you're not distracting other folks. I'd love for folks to share where they're joining from in the chat box. We've had some really kind of cool global communities coming together today, and I can just tell by seeing some of the familiar faces in this room that there's more of that happening right now. If you want to tweet about the event, use hashtag GitLab Community Day, and we'll make sure to, amplify those messages out to the GitLab community. I'm dropping that hashtag in the chat box. And then lastly, just if you can, close tabs, put Slack on, notifications on pause, and just try and relax and be present for the meetup, because I think Brendan's going to do a great job, and it should be a pretty fun event. So with that, Brendan, take it away.
Great. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Appreciate the introduction. Really, really excited to see all of you here. Wish it was in person, but like John said, if you can share in the chat where you're at, I think it would be next to impossible for all of us to be in the same room right now, because it seems like we've got folks from all over. So the positive thing is we're all able to call in from where we're at. I've had to explain that to my kids, like, they right now, so I'm on the East Coast as well of the US, like John. I'm near Annapolis, Maryland, which is just north of Washington, DC, on the East Coast of the United States. And my kids are like, "Oh, you have a meeting tonight, Dad?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do, but you don't understand. Like, if it was not COVID times, this would be like a 3-day thing. Like, I would have flown somewhere, I would have been there, I would have like done the thing, and then I had to fly back, and I get to be with them more than if we were in person. So that's a positive thing too, to some extent, as for those of you parents can attest. So yeah, really excited to be here. As John said, feel free to interrupt and speak up, or put a chat question in as we go. There's a little presentation, but I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on that, hopefully. And as much as I like hearing myself talk, I've talked at a lot of cameras during COVID and would much rather talk with all of you. So yeah, feel free to interrupt or put it in the chat, and John will feel free to interrupt me. John actually is my boss, so he won't feel bad interrupting me, so it's cool.
We're a team.
I mean, I'm sorry, John leads our team. Yeah, so my name's Brendan O'Leary. Like I said, I'm in Annapolis, Maryland, on the East Coast of the United States. Technically the sailing capital of the world. That's your fun fact for today, if you don't learn anything else. I'm part of the Developer Evangelism team, which is part of our community relations team at GitLab. I've had a couple different roles at GitLab. I've been here since 2017, when we were only 150 folks, and we're now over 1,200 people in 65 different countries, still with exactly 0 offices, as John mentioned. Yeah, but I'm really excited to be here. One of my old roles was running product for our CI product. So I'm really hoping someone can stump me with something today, because that would be impressive. I should know everything, but I don't. So challenge, you all accepted that challenge, whether you knew it or not. So anyway, yeah, just a quick introduction. Then we're going to go talk about just some of the basics of GitLab CI if you haven't encountered it before. And then we're going to spend a bunch of time just in GitLab and coding, just playing around with stuff, seeing how it works, and trying to build on those concepts we're going to talk about. And this whole thing is available publicly on gitlab.com. I think in the next slide we actually have the link. Yep, there it is. And John can paste that link into chat as well. But the project we're going to be working on is available for you to fork, and you can follow along with me as we go. If you have a gitlab.com account already, you're good to go. Otherwise, you can sign up for one real quick. And for this project, you can just fork the link here, and you'll be able to get going. Great. So, quick little introduction. First, we're going to talk about kind of some concept of GitLab CI/CD. So, GitLab, as many of you may know, started, of course, as an open source alternative to GitHub, but since has kind of gone pretty wide in terms of what we cover from a DevOps perspective. And we are now a single application, as John mentioned, for the entire DevOps lifecycle. But today we're going to focus on the stuff that comes like right after you've written the code, which is, okay, now I need to like build the code and make sure it all integrates together correctly. And I want to get it deployed, right? CI/CD. And so there's some concepts in GitLab CI/CD that are overloaded words in the industry, so we'll just talk about what they mean in GitLab. So a job is basically just a set of commands that we want to execute. So typically, your CI/CD pipeline will have one or many jobs that can then be organized into stages. So those kind of three components, pipeline can have many stages and a stage can have many jobs, are the big bricks that you can use to put together your CI/CD within GitLab. Then there's some other concepts here. There's a concept of the environments, right? So like, what environment am I deploying to? Am I creating a test environment just to run these tests inside? Or am I running CD, continuous deployment, and deploying this code into production? There's also a lot of really powerful variables that you can use that either come with GitLab or you can inject into your jobs to make them do different things based on what's going on. What branch are we running on, or are we running this in a fork or not, those kinds of things. And then you can have lots of different outputs, right? We call these artifacts, job artifacts. And those could be, the artifact that is like the binary that you've built at the end of the day. But as you'll see, as we go through this process, you could also be like the report on the security audit that GitLab ran against your code, or the static code analysis that was run. And then there's also this concept of the GitLab Runner. And the GitLab Runner is what actually runs, I know it's confusing, the job. So this is just kind of an agent that can live anywhere, right? It could be a server, it could be your laptop, it could be an auto-scaled thing inside of some sort of cloud. It could be, in Kubernetes as a pod that scales up and down. And so it's basically just the agent where the job is actually going to execute. And most typically those jobs are going to execute inside of a Docker image. And that's what we'll be showing today. But the runner can also be a number of different things. Like there's a runner that runs on IBM Linux for IBM Z, right? So the runner can run lots of different places, but today we'll mostly focus on running inside of a Docker image. And then I've been saying CI/CD all this time, right? But again, I think it helps to define those terms and methodologies, right? They're, again, very overloaded in our industry. But when we say CI, we mean continuous integration. So that's, I'm committing code, maybe John's committing some code. We want to integrate that code together and build it all together, test it, right? Run unit tests, run integration tests to make sure that's happening. That's really the CI pipeline, continuous integration pipeline. And then CD, depending on who you ask, might mean continuous delivery or continuous deployment. Really doesn't matter what you're doing, but the idea here is you've got to get, that code out to production, whatever that means for your application, in a consistent, continuous way, right? And so that may go through different stages. Like that may say, hey, we want to review what the app changes are going to look like, or we have to put them into staging and run, real life simulated tests against them before we deploy this into our production environment or ship it to our customer that consumes it, through continuous delivery. And then, our kind of CI/CD workflow in GitLab. So we talk about DevOps as these 10 stages, from planning to, creating the software to verifying, packaging, and releasing it. Those are the 3 stages that we talk about. We define in GitLab as the CI/CD portion of GitLab. And so verify is kind of that continuous integration part, right? This is where we're going to run, your unit tests. We're going to run integration tests. We might run, performance or code quality scanning. We might scan, if you're building a container, we might scan the container you're building to say, are there any known vulnerabilities in any of the layers of that container? We might scan your open source dependencies that you've pulled in to say, are there known vulnerabilities in any of those open source dependencies? And then package is where, again, you can package it up, right? Is this going to be a Java project and we're going to create, a jar at the end and put that into a Maven repository? Or is it, just going to live in a Docker container? Where is that going to live? And of course, all of that then can live within GitLab, where that package is, kind of stored as the, single binary result of the CI/CD of the CI workflow at that point in time. And then the release phase is all the deployment stuff. So we've got a lot of different ways to do that. You can deploy into Kubernetes, you can deploy into a cloud provider, you can just run a deployment manually, through scripts that you have. But those are kind of the three phases we talk about. And so if we look at that as a pipeline, and remember that pipeline is this kind of overarching view of GitLab CI/CD, here we can see this kind of basic pipeline that does a build stage, right on the left, that has a build job, test stage that has the test jobs, et cetera, kind of down the line. And there's lots of different ways that you can compose these pipelines. Again, we're going to kind of start from the ground up with small little building blocks, but it can get, really complex. You might have, for instance, if you look at how GitLab uses GitLab to build the software GitLab, you'll see, we've got RSpec and thousands and thousands of Ruby tests that get run in the test stage, and kind of explode into, lots of different kinds of tests that happen. And that relationship can be kind of complex. And so at its most basic form, we have this kind of, a stage has one or many jobs, and those jobs run in parallel. But more recently, we've added a thing called DAG pipelines, which is directed acyclic graph, which is a lot of very complex terminology that means, there's a lot of complex relationships. And this is the idea that, it's not necessarily that linear relationship that we saw previously, but oftentimes there's things that depend on maybe something from the first stage, but really don't depend on everything from the second testing stage. And so the DAG pipeline is how you can both visualize in GitLab and define those interrelationships for all the jobs that happen in your pipeline. And all of that's going to be configured in YAML, right? So we have the concept of a GitLab CI YAML file. That's where all of the configuration is going to live, right? And that's what we're going to be playing around with in GitLab today. And so this is a basic YAML file. There's a bunch of templates that come with GitLab so that you can get started with, oh, I'm starting a Java project. So show me how to build, how would GitLab think about building a Maven project in GitLab CI? And we'll take a look at that later. And then there's also a concept of auto DevOps. And the idea of auto DevOps is it's automatic. And this is, if you have your code, the idea is you can upload it to GitLab, and without writing a GitLab CI YAML, GitLab can detect the language of that code, detect tests that you've written, and build and test your code without actually any configuration. And sounds like a lot of magic, and it is a little bit of magic, but it's also a lot of great open source tools that we're using to do that. First and foremost being a thing called Cloud Native Build Packs, which is this thing that kind of evolved out of Heroku. For those that are familiar with Heroku doing that with your code, oh, just give us your code and we'll build it and we'll publish it for you. And so we're leveraging some of that, and under the covers, spoiler alert, it's just a really complex, really well-written GitLab CI YAML file to build your code automatically. Oh yeah, there was a whole slide about it, but I already talked about it. And then, GitLab is also heavily focused, as I said, on the entire DevOps lifecycle. And we would say that that has to include security, right? DevSecOps or whatever you want to call it. And so there's lots of different security tools that come bundled within GitLab. We talked about some of them already: static application security testing, right? So that's scanning your code for known ways of writing vulnerable code if it's written that way. There's dynamic application security testing. This is, hey, the application's running, we want to ping against it to see if we can break in kind of known ways. Dependency scanning is, hey, you've got a Node.js project with massive known modules folder. Who knows what's vulnerable in there or what's not? Probably half of it is. And so let's scan and let you know what known vulnerabilities may be in that open source, those open source libraries you're bringing in. And it's not just Node, but any open source library. Container scanning, again, is doing the same thing, but for layers in your Docker image that you're ending up to build. License compliance, this is critical for enterprises. So again, if I'm bringing open source code into my project and then I'm then commercializing it, I may not be able to bring certain kinds of licenses in, and so that can look for that. Secret detection we're going to look at today, accidentally committing your AWS credentials to your Git repository. You want GitLab to hopefully find that for you. Recently added fuzz testing. We're working on what we call auto remediation, which is if you find one of these things, GitLab should be in many cases able to just suggest a merge request or automatically push through the change to your code, right? We have all your code there. We want to be able to just do that in a more automated way. And then of course, security professionals are using GitLab. And so we've got a dashboard where we can roll all of this information up for them. All right, any questions up until this point? I'm just gonna pause and take a look. If there's anything going on, I don't think there's any going on in the chat. But before we dive in, just want to make sure. I went really quick because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that stuff, but great, awesome. All right, so let's take a look, right? Again, this is kind of the overview of the pipeline again, right? What we're gonna do, this is kind of like the GitLab flow, right? And you can see this in our documentation. It's like there's an issue to make a change. We're gonna go create a merge request. We're gonna commit our changes. The pipeline's gonna run. We're gonna be able to see that in a review app maybe. We're gonna be able to review that with our peers and discuss the change, get the right approvals that are required, and then merge it and have that pipeline run on the main branch that is gonna deploy it into production. And so that's what we're gonna take a look at. So I've got GitLab up here. And we're going to start our first little lab here. And so to get started, we're going to just do, I think John, you shared the slides in the chat, correct?
Yep.
Great, okay.
The slides are in there and a link to the demo repo.
Awesome. I'm going to share my other screen, which has GitLab on it.
And they're actually, we just got a question in the chat too, if you want to take a pause before you get into the demo.
Yeah.
Luis, I don't know, do you want to verbalize that question? I'll give you a second to unmute or I'll read it for you. All right, so Luis Franca asks, this auto DevOps integrates to monitoring in what way?
Oh, to monitoring. Okay, great. Yeah, so auto DevOps, the first way that you were able to, that GitLab assumed you were going to deploy with auto DevOps was into Kubernetes. We've got a very tight integration to Kubernetes where we can actually install Prometheus directly into your cluster and connect to it, which then allows us to have a lot of like metrics and understanding of what's going on inside the cluster. So auto DevOps would, again, build your application automatically, Dockerize it if you don't have a Docker file, create a Helm chart if you don't have a Helm chart, deploy with Helm and Tiller your application into Kubernetes, and then monitor that through Prometheus. Also has Jaeger tracing built in so that you can do monitoring and tracing. And so that's kind of like the happy path. But then all of those little pieces I just said are actually composed items within the auto DevOps YAML. So you can take little pieces of it. And like if you're not deploying to Kubernetes, you can still connect the same way if you read our documentation about like how auto monitoring works. So hopefully that makes sense. And we're starting to support a lot of other deployment destinations other than Kubernetes. And so we'll see, things like ECS and trying to think what else has been added recently, EC2, other ways of deploying that are not Kubernetes. And you'll see those things kind of come along with them. Hopefully
well, and Brendan, unless you've picked up ventriloquy as a hobby, I think your screen froze.
Oh, did it? My face or
yes.
my? Yeah, I have this fancy camera, as everyone can see, and sometimes it happens.
You're back in action.
Okay. Was I like frozen talking with my hands? Because that's fantastic.
No, it was more like this really cool expression on your face. I wish I had taken a screenshot, but I didn't.
It's recorded. You just gotta note the time. Okay. All right, great. So if you're following along on the slides, oh shoot, I don't know what slide number we're on. Slide number 18. And we're gonna do this first little lab. So if you've navigated to the project already, you can go ahead and fork it into your own repository with a little fork button here. And then you'll be able to follow along. And I'm going to do a lot of this in our web IDE. So we have this kind of built-in web-based IDE in GitLab. It's based off Monaco, the same thing that VS Code's based off of. And it just makes it really convenient for, quickly adding code or doing a demo in a meetup. So I'm going to add a new file. Right here we can see this project that my colleague Michael put together. It's a little Go project, just a few little things in it. And we're going to add a new file. And I don't have to type it because I can just click GitLab CI YAML. And then I'm just going to add a really simple GitLab YAML file. So first I'm going to specify a global image. And when I say image here, it's going to be the Docker image that we're going to run the code inside of. So I'm just going to use Alpine so that it's nice and small and doesn't take too long to run. And then the next thing I'm going to specify is a job, right? And so the job I'm going to name test simple. And so that is how I can specify a job by name. And then I can say script. That's the script that I'm going to run. And I'm just going to say exit one, right? So I've got one job, didn't even specify the stage. And I'm going to go ahead and commit it. And I'm going to let it create a new branch and start a merge request. So go ahead and commit. So that did a couple things. That created a new branch, right? This Brendan main patch 447787. It started a merge request, right? So we call it a merge request in GitLab. You might hear pull request in GitHub. You're requesting that the server run the command git merge. So I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't call it a merge request, but that's a conversation for a different day. And so here I can give it a title and say start adding CI. I can describe it, right? If I was working against a certain issue, I can say closes issue number 1, 2, 3, 4, and it'll automatically be closed when this merge request is accepted. I could assign it to my engineering manager, put a milestone or labels. There's lots of other options that come here with the merge request, and we won't spend too long on that today. So, oh, the red button is ominous. Let's take a look. It's checking my pipeline status. I can hear my computer even having a little bit of a. All right, okay, well, let's go to the pipeline and we can see, okay, it failed. And why did it fail? Well, I told it to, right? I actually said exit one, right? And so what GitLab is expecting here is, an exit of 0. And so anything that, exits with a non-zero code, GitLab will treat as a failure. So that's great for, you run your integration tests or your unit tests, right? Those are going to exit with a code that's a non-zero code. And GitLab will recognize that failed. And you can see that the merge button is turned red because I'm not able to merge it because the pipeline just failed. And so I can fix that real quick, right? Again, it was kind of an intentional error. On the next slide, you'll see, and I can just click this open to web IDE. And the beauty of that is that actually opens that merge request in the web IDE. So let me go back for a second because I showed the pipeline and I showed the merge request page, but of course, the key of the merge request is what changes are being made, right? And so here you would see all the changes that were happening. In this case, I'm just adding one file with a few lines, but if I was modifying or changing any files, I would see all that here, be able to make comments, etc. All the things you'd expect in a merge request or a pull request. But another really cool thing of having the web IDE is I can just open that entire merge request in an IDE, which I find really helpful because, like, as a developer or someone who plays developer on TV, I'm used to looking at things in an IDE, and so it's just kind of nice sometimes to just jump really quick in the IDE. I don't have to check it out to my computer and update and fetch and all that stuff. And you can see here it opens me up to the diff page, so I can see I would see all the files that were changed, and I can go back to the edit page and change it. So I'm going to change it to exit 0. Commit that to the branch we're working on. Let's say commit. All right, and that's going to kick off a new pipeline. And actually, we can see the pipeline in the IDE because it knows what it's doing and understands that I'm working on merge request 9. I made this commit 14 seconds ago, and it's running this pipeline for that commit. And so every time I commit and push to GitLab, it's going to have this pipeline run. And so, again, our pipeline only has the one job and one stage and the one job. But we can see this one passed, right? Job succeeded, exit 0. It's fantastic. Okay, and so if I go back to our merge request, we can see the pipeline passed. I can merge it. It's really happy. I can again see the changes right here. Any questions about that before I go on to the next one? Okay, so next we're going to talk about CI variables. And so again, that is just kind of a cool way that you can add variables that are going to impact the way your job runs. A way I can do that is I can say, in this, I could add a variables section at the top. And I could say the build type, the release. And then in my script, I could add a second job here that says test variable. And I can actually echo out that same variable, right? And then exit 0. And so when that job runs, we'll see that that variable is passed throughout the pipeline to every job as an environmental variable. The other beauty here, which I think is linked in the document, but if it's not, I just always use Google, GitLab CI/CD variables. There's a lot of really great built-in environmental variables, or I'm going to go back and click on it, predefined variables they're called, where I can understand a lot about what's going on and again, make determinations about how my build's going to run based on, okay, what SHA is this running for? What's the name of the branch that this commits on? What's the job ID, or was it a manual job that's running? There's lots and lots and lots of variables that come kind of predefined that can help me run my jobs in different ways. If we go see our test variable job, we see that echoes release. Great. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how tests work, for actual code, right? We've just been kind of doing this exit 1, exit 0 thing. That's great and all. But the next thing we're going to try to do is actually build this code, right? So the code we have here is a little Go project. So I'm going to open the web IDE again and start a new branch for this one. And starting over again, I'm going to we'll pretend like we didn't add that one before. We're going to add a GitLab CI YAML. And this time, instead of just doing like a test job, we're going to actually try to run this code. And I'm sorry, build the code. And the way I'm going to start for that is I'm actually going to find the template for Golang. So here you can see there's lots of templates that come with GitLab that will show you like how would you deploy to ECS, or how would I run a PHP build, or what if I wanted to use Terraform in GitLab CI, right? And so I'm going to search for Go, and start from that template. So you can see it brought in this whole template that, that we can use to get started. And the first thing we're going to do is it asks us to edit this repo name to have our namespace and project. So for us, that is, well, for me, that's this GitLab, it's the group and then the project name. So it's rather long for me. It's this GitLab marketing, corporate marketing, developer evangelism code, CI, and then CI Community Day 2020 is the full thing. Your namespace, if you forked it into like your namespace, like if I had forked it for me, it would be gitlab.com/Brendan/CI Community Day 2020. And so it's that easy. And then so I'm also following along with the slides as well, so I don't forget anything. I added the repo name, which was 2B on slide 23. And next I'm going to replace my binary. Where's my binary? Right here with Tanuki. And the path is going to be Tanuki. So what this is doing is I'm going to do a go build in our project directory /Tanuki, right? And so this is this tanuki.go file here. And then we're also going to save that as an artifact. So once the binary gets built, we'll post that as an artifact after the job. And then I think that's going to be pretty good to go. All right. So we'll create a new branch and start a new merge request with that. If I mess something up, we'll find out. It'll be a live demo fun. Submit that merge request. Uh-oh, I already see red and I'm concerned. We will find out. No, it's just running still. All right, so this pipeline has got two jobs, right? So the first one is format. We saw that in the CI YAML. And it's just running, it has an issue. Undeclared name OS. All right, well, like I said, if I had a problem, then we were gonna see it. But again, much like the turkey in the oven, this problem was there to begin with. And it failed because we were missing this package, right? The OS package in Go, in the main.go file. And so let's go back and take a look at that. Back to the merge request. My favorite button, the open web IDE from the merge request. And we're actually going to look at the main.go file. And here you can see, again, my friend Michael intentionally commented out this section when we're importing the two Go packages we need for it to work. And we're going to go ahead and commit that. Uncommenting, the easiest fix ever. Not a word, but that's okay. All right, awesome. So now let's see that new pipeline, if it's doing all right. Should go a little bit better this time. Now, one thing I'll point out while that's running is that in this pipeline that failed, you can see here we're looking at a list of all of the pipelines. Here's Michael doing the meetup earlier in the day that John was talking about. And here's all the ones that we've run so far tonight. And here, when we had this test fail, right, the format test failed because there was no, the package wasn't being imported correctly. It didn't actually run, it skipped this next stage. So by default, if one job in a stage fails, it will not run any of the jobs in any of the stages afterwards. Now, there's two exceptions to that. One is we could, again, have this DAG type pipeline where we explicitly call out what depends on what, and then GitLab smarter about like, oh, this failed, so don't run these two jobs, but do run this one because the thing it depended on passed. Or you can have a job that actually explicitly is set to run when something fails, right? So you might have like, oh, I want to, send a Slack message or do something specific or save a different kind of artifact when the pipeline does fail. So you might have a job that's specified to run on failure. But by default, GitLab is just going to stop running the pipeline if one of the stages fails. All right. We are going to add a new stage. So here we had the pipeline pass, which is great. We had our test stage, our build stage, and it worked great. And excuse me. Next, we're going to go and add a new stage called deploy. And so if we open this in the web ID again, we can see the stages are defined here: test, build, deploy. And then each job has to specify one of those stages, right? So this specified test, the specified build. There's no job which specified deploy, which is fine, but we're going to add one. So I add a new job called run. And in this job, I'm going to run it in stage deploy. And I'm going to run this code that we just compiled, right? Which is going to be Tanuki, right? Great. So we commit and commit. All right. Sorry, just 1 second. All right, let's see that. All right, so again, we're going to run, now the pipeline you see is test, build, deploy. And we'll just wait for that to finish, and we'll see if that actually runs the way we expected it to. Any questions on what we've done so far? Great. Like I said, really basic building blocks. But next, after this runs, we're going to add some test coverage reports. We're going to do some more advanced stuff like test coverage and real unit tests. And then we'll get into some security stuff. It's kind of the more fancy building blocks. That coffee is now cold. Come on, little pipeline, it's okay. There we go. Of course, as soon as I clicked away from it. And here, just one thing I'll point out while this is starting, you can see, we talked about that GitLab Runner, right? The agent where it's actually running, but then we never set one up. Well, on GitLab.com, GitLab Incorporated provides, a set of what we call shared runners. So you can have shared runners that are shared across an entire GitLab instance. Oh, look at that. It worked. And we got our Tanuki. The Tanuki has been summoned, as Michael said. That's great. Does my screen size impact that? No, okay. But anyway, what I was saying was, you can see here that it's running on an auto-scaled Docker runner. So GitLab actually is creating a new virtual machine for every job that's run in GitLab. Now, there's lots of different ways you can do this auto-scaling. For running, free compute for the world with GitLab.com, we like to have huge separation of concerns, and so we create a new machine for every job, and then we destroy it when the job's done. But you can see here, it's creating the machine in GCP, which is where we run GitLab.com, and then running it within the Docker executor, and using the Docker image that we specified. So that's where you can see the runner coming into play. Now, again, I could set up my own runners if I wanted and have it run on my laptop and then get this output on my laptop. Or if I, had something that I wanted to build, like I was building an iOS app and I needed to have it built inside of a Mac. That's where setting up my own runner comes into play. All right, but next we're going to set up some test coverage and some unit tests, right? Obviously, we want to be able to run tests against this, and GitLab recognizes, a lot of very common unit test methodologies. But we're going to set it up and let it know what we're going to be using here. So if I go to our settings of our project, sorry, just a sec, and then we go over to CI/CD. I went to CI/CD already, and general pipelines. We'll see here, we can specify a regular expression that's going to be used to find the test coverage output that comes into the log. So of course, that's going to vary depending on, which, what language I'm programming in, and then what I'm using for my test coverage. In this case, we're going to use Go test coverage that's built in, which requires this regular expression that I don't need to remember because GitLab has it for me right here. Save changes. And so then we're going to go and see that. Again, the project has been pre-cooked for this. We've got this Tanuki test file that we're going to look at. And actually, you know what? Let's do that in that same merge request. Let's keep using that one we've got. Very exciting build Go code. All right. So in here, again, we've got this unit tests already written, a set of simple tests for our code. And we're going to add a unit test job to the test phase, right? So we have that one formatting test that runs, but now we're also going to run another job called unit test. And we're going to run it in the same stage. And that script is going to be go test with coverage. And it's like this same thing. All of the Go files except for vendor. Okay. All right. And then let's try that. All right. So we'll commit that. Say add unit tests. Run commit. All right. So it's going to do a couple of things for us. First of all, of course, it's going to run the job, right? We'll see that now the pipeline in the test stage has this unit test option as well. But it's also going to show us that we will have the ability to view that coverage in the merge request once it's done running. So there's a number of ways that you can view different things about the changes, and we'll see it with security next as well. But the idea of this merge request widget is we want to show you everything in here that you need to know about the merge that you're going to make. So of course we want to know, what pipeline has the most recent pipeline passed, and is it okay? See here we saw the coverage pop in, right? So we can see that the coverage is 67.6%. And if this was our next merge, we merge this, and then a week down the road, John makes a change and adds a whole bunch of code and it's not covered, we would see that, not that he would do that, but we would see that percentage drop, right? You could see the diff, right? So it's not just reviewing the diff of the code that's important. I mean, that's important, obviously, but we also want to, in this merge request, bring up all the other differences that are coming, right? Like, what's the change in coverage? Oh, I think I froze again. Got unfreeze. Okay. What's the change in coverage? What's the change in, like, did we introduce new security vulnerabilities with this merge request? And so all those things we're going to see here. Yeah, so that's that. Any questions about test coverage? Anything we've talked about up until now.
I think it sounds great so far.
Awesome.
Just to be clear, Brendan, like all of the features that you're showing are available in the free version?
I have yet to show something that is in a paid version, I think.
Yeah, so when we talk about this being an
Yeah.
open source, project, and we also have like a software as a service offering tier that's free. So you can, kind of implement all of the stuff that Brendan's showing directly into your projects that you're hosting on GitLab, or, if you're hosting them on GitHub, you can also use GitLab CI. So it's not just for folks that are hosting their code on GitLab.
Yep. And I'm just trying to see something real quick. Thought that you could see in the docs somewhere. I don't know what happened to those flags. There used to be a flag so you could verify what is and is not in the open source version.
Yeah, I think normally.
Oh, here it is. Okay.
Yeah, it says.
Yeah, so only stuff that's outside will have. So, like for instance, like everything we've looked at so far is in the open source version, because it didn't have this flag when I went to the docs, right? So, like Elasticsearch integration, which is a feature that's in our paid version, but as we can see from like test coverage, that's what I was just going to verify that, like for instance, test coverage, it's not in a paid version. It's in our open source version. And I mean, a big reason that this specifically is in the open source version is we're leveraging, the open source code coverage tools to do it, right? So we very much believe in the stewardship of open source there, that there's no reason we should package that up and make money off of someone else's open source. Okay, so that is kind of the basics of pipelines, building, testing, all that great stuff. So the next thing we're going to go into, if you check out slides 29 and 30 and 31, is security, right? We're going to talk about how we can secure the code that we're writing. And then that'll be the wrap up. You'll see that after that, there's some like self-practice things that you can do on your own. Slides 33 through 38. But these three, we just got three more things we're going to show, and then we can chat about what we've seen or any other questions that you might have. So the first thing we're going to do is try to do what we call secret detection. So secret detection in GitLab is when we want to look for, are there any things you've committed to your source code that you don't want in there, right? For instance, like I said earlier, AWS secrets, or your a private key, right? These things you should not, if you're doing it today. I'm happy to talk to you about how you don't have to do that, but you definitely should not commit those secrets to Git, because we don't want those in plain text and available to everyone. And so here we're going to actually leverage. We're going to leverage auto DevOps a little bit. So as I mentioned, I'll just show it real quick. Auto DevOps is actually this really well written CI YAML file, but it actually is broken out into pieces so that we can pull different pieces in and out from it. So security detection is something that just comes with auto DevOps, which is great, but sorry, I don't want to actually save that change. But we've just spent all this time building our CI file. It does exactly what we want. We just want to bring secret detection in, right? And so we can actually just include just that template from GitLab by just saying include secret detection. So I'm just going to put that right here. Right? And so this template is actually something that's bundled within GitLab and is going to run that secret detection job. Let's go ahead and commit that. So just with that one little line, it actually brought in a whole new job that I didn't, write any script for. This is a GitLab defined kind of templated job. And so we'll see this, we'll run and look for, any kind of, it'll analyze for anything in our repo or in the Git log that may contain a secret file. And then uploads this report to our merge request. And so now we see this security scanning section has been added because we added one type of security scan, which is a secret detection. And once it's done, it's going to load in soon. Maybe, maybe not. GitLab. I don't think I should have to wait till the whole pipeline's done, but maybe I do. Maybe I do. Come on. Don't know why it's not loading, but we'll let the pipeline finish. Or I can go find one of Michael's from earlier. The beauty of going second.
Cheating. And then Brendan, maybe after you finish this exercise, we'll wrap it up because we are getting close to being at time.
Oh, great. Thanks. I appreciate it. Oh, no, that was adding an artifact. No, I just don't know what's going on with that. Oh, no vulnerabilities. Well, it was supposed to find one. I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Here we can see in Michael's, this AWS key, maybe he removed it accidentally from master, or well, it would be good to remove, but and so yeah, we'll wrap up here. You can try the rest of these exercises I mentioned on your own, but the thing I'll leave you with is, here we also see all of the security vulnerabilities that are introduced with a given merge request. So again, just like we're reviewing the code, we're reviewing the app, we want to review any changes to our security posture as we're going to merge new code in.
Awesome. Thanks, Brendan. And if folks will just join me in giving Brendan a round of applause, you can unmute your microphones and give him some appreciation for putting together a great kind of demo and showing off some of those basic kind of capabilities that GitLab has to offer and how nicely everything is integrated together. So thanks for showing us all that, Brendan. That was really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So, just to kind of to wrap things up, this was our first, kind of GitLab Global Community Day meetup, and we actually did 3 meetups, and it was a great day. We had about 100 people across the 3 events, lots of engagement throughout, particularly with the first 2 sessions. And, it just was so great to have so many people show up and participate. And so we really just want to say thank you all for being here. We couldn't do these events without all of you. And we hope you'll join us next time we put this together. If you're interested in learning more about GitLab CI, we're going to do a meetup in 2 weeks on December 15th. You can register for that in the same GitLab virtual meetups group where you signed up for this event. And that one's going to feature 4 folks from our CI team, so product designers and product managers. And those folks are going to share some of their future plans for our pipeline editor and our visual pipeline builder. So it's going to be a really cool chance to get a look into what's kind of coming down the road for GitLab CI. And then there'll also be an AMA session. And we're asking people to submit questions in advance. So when you register, you'll be prompted to submit a question. So please bring your CI questions to that event. And I hope to see you there in 2 weeks. For folks wondering about the swag that was promised in the meetup description, we'll be sending out a follow-up form after this event. It'll probably happen tomorrow because I've been doing these things since 3 a.m. my time. So after this, I'm going to lay down. We'll get that form out to everyone. You'll be able to submit your contact information so we can follow up with the giveaways. And then lastly, we're going to keep doing these. We've been doing virtual meetups since March, and we're going to continue doing them for as long as we have to keep the community together. And we'd love for you to stay involved, either by attending or if you're interested in speaking at an event or moderating an event or even just proposing a topic that you want to hear about. We'd love for your feedback. Please send me an email, evangelist@gitlab.com, with any ideas you have or topics you'd like to present, and we can get you, into the schedule or find a speaker to kind of help cover the topics you're interested in. And so with that, I'll just, leave it by saying thank you all so much. Have a great night or great rest of your day, depending on where you are. And I hope to see you at the next meetup in 2 weeks. And thanks again, Brendan. Great job.
Yep. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you.